Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to talk about dplyr package. So first of all, let's install that package in our RStudio. So I want to type install.packages, and in the parentheses, I need to use the double quotation mark, and then I type dplyr. So this is the package we are going to use. So first of all, you want to run that line so that dplyr package is installed. And then we want to run the library function on the same package name so that this package is loaded and ready to be used. And in this video, we are going to use the dataset iris as our example dataset. So you want to run the data function on the dataset so you have access to this dataset. And if you are curious about what this dataset is, you can use question mark with the dataset name, and you can run it. On the right side, you're going to find a detailed description on this dataset. So the first function I want to talk about is called glimpse, which is a function of summarizing function. So you can use this function on a dataset, and it will print out how many observations you have, how many variables you have, and what does each variable look like. Like for example, for this dataset, you can easily see how many categorical variables you have and how many numerical variables you have. And another thing we can talk about is called filter function. So the filter function is to manipulate the data set on each record. My first goal is to filter out the data, like create data set with sample length greater than 5. So I only want to analyze the data where the sample lengths are recorded to be greater than 5. So to do that, I'm going to type the dataset name first, and then I'm going to use a pipe. So this sign, because I'm using a Mac, so I'm using Shift, Command, and M. If you use these three keys together, you are going to type the pipe in that one hit. So iris, pipe, and I'm going to use a filter function, and I'm going to change the data according to the number of rows I have. So I'm going to use the sample length, and then I'm going to make it greater than 5. So I can run this line of code directly, and this data set showed us the output after I did the filter function on the whole data set. You can see that the sample length is all greater than 5 from the output. But we don't really want it to be printed out in the console. Sometimes you may want to give this data set a name so that you can use the data set for future analysis. So I can call it iris underline long L5 sample. So that's how I define the variable, the data set name. So I named it as iris length greater than 5 and sample length. So I can run this code. You can see there is no result printed out in the console, and the data set is actually defined. You can view the data set by copying this name, and you can run it, and you can see the sample length is like all greater than 5, starting from 5.1 and ended at 7.9. So this is a smaller data set with only 118 entries and still 5 total columns. So filter function, it will change the observations you have, and it will not change how many variables you have. So then we can work on our second goal. Let's create a new data set with sample length greater than 5, and at the same time, I want the sample width greater than 3. So in this way, I have one condition on sample length variable and another condition on sample width variable. So same thing, I'm going to use iris. I'm going to type the pipe and then the filter function. So I'm going to type the conditions now. Sample length greater than 5. And because we have two conditions, we want both conditions met for the new data set. So I'm going to use sample width greater than 3 for the second condition. And you can either run this code to see the output in the console, or you can name it as a new data set. For example, I call it iris LW sample. I just give it a name randomly. So now you can run the code and you can also view the data to check if you have created successfully. Maybe we can do a different thing this time. You can run the summary function on the data set, which will show you the summary statistics on each variable separately. And if you look at this newly created data set, the sample length has a minimum 5.1 and the sample width has a minimum of 3.1. So you can see we have applied the two conditions to the new data set successfully. Now you may be curious about what if I want to create a data set with either sample length greater than 5 or sample width greater than 3. So in that way, I'm going to copy the code here, but I'm going to change the and sign into a or. That means if sample length is greater than 5, that row is selected. If sample width is greater than 3, that row is selected. So if there is one of the two conditions satisfied, we are going to select that row into our new data set. So maybe I can add or in there, and then I can run the code, and then you can view the data. So this time it might be a little confusing because we are using either this condition or that condition. So you may not see strictly one is greater than 5 or the other is greater than 3 all the time. But this time it left us with 138 entries. And you can see sample length can be smaller than 5 and sample width can be smaller than 3.